Welcome to Creative Conversations. I'm Roger Humphrey. In this episode, I'm pleased to welcome the highly respected costumer for theater and opera, Patti Campbell. I found talking with Patti to be insightful and entertaining, and I think you're really going to like this. Before we get started, please take a moment to hit the subscribe or follow button. It's really a little thing, but it helps the channel a lot. Thank you. And I'm welcoming Patti Campbell to the show. Thank you, Patti, for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome.
So you are a costumer, and you've done quite a bit of work. What got you interested in being a costumer? How did that happen?
You know, I started doing costume design work as freelance because I ran the costume shop for the Lansing Civic Players. They had an amazing costume collection of.
Bring your camera down a little bit. So
this
there
way?
we go. Thank you.
That better? Yeah. I can only see me like this much.
Okay.
So whatever that means, I don't know. Anyway, my mother taught me how to sew when I was 5 years old. I was using her sewing machine. She would cut out patterns out of newspapers, and so I learned how to drape. I didn't know that was the correct term.
What does that mean, draping? I've heard the term.
Draping means you take a piece of fabric and you can drape it on a dress form. I don't know if you can see I've got a couple of mannequins back here. Dress form.
Yep, we can see it.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I have several more. Anyway, so you actually take a piece of fabric and you pin it to the dress form, folding it or pinning it, whatever you need to do. And then you're actually draping the fabric the way you want it to be. So if it's a dress, a shirt, whatever, a certain neckline you want, then you drape that and you pin it. You take that off. And I usually use muslin for draping, but I use regular fabric too. Anyway, then you take that, cut it out, and that becomes your pattern. And then you cut it out of your fashion fabric, what we call, and you don't need a paper pattern that you have to buy down at Joann's or somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So that's how I learned. I learned how to do that on my own, and I thought, oh, everybody knows how to do this, but apparently not. So I've just been really I have an eye for detail, and I can see things. I can take a picture of something and I can deconstruct it in my mind and realize how I need to create a pattern to create that exact look. And that's what I've done over the years. So
that got you started sewing. How did you get involved in theater and such?
You know, when I ran the costume shop, well, I was doing theater things for my kids. I was making all their costumes and making things for the schools. And then after they grew up and left, and I worked for the costume shop in Lansing, and I was contacted by film people because at that time in Michigan, there was a lot of independent films being made here. And gosh, one thing just led to another. People would ask me, hey, you want to costume this show or that show? And I was like, sure. So, you know, it's just something that has come so easy for me to do. So I've been very blessed, I guess, in order, because one thing led to another. I was at the Lansing Civic Players costume shop for about maybe 8 years. And during that time, I put the costume shop in the Michigan Film Office registry book, because there is a Michigan Film Office registry book that everyone has to sign if they come into the state to do a film. It's just the way it is. And so in that book, you'll find a listing of crew members, you know, and casting agencies and whatever. And I put us in there as a costume shop resource, because we had literally thousands of vintage pieces, as well as costume pieces that were made for particular characters. And so one thing led to another, and I ended up doing, I was the costumer for A Moment of Grace, and it had Polly Perrette. She came from LA.
Sure.
To, you know, she was in NCIS, I believe, the original show. So she came to Grand Rapids, and it was a student film project, and a director named Alba Francesca came from LA as well. And so she was their guest director. And they came to the costume shop in Lansing and interviewed and looked around, and they were like, yes, this is what we need to do. And so they actually did a film of me in the costume shop, behind the scenes, sort of to speak, a little documentary. It was kind of fun.
That's
And
cool.
and the film was about an American doctor who was going behind enemy lines to help this pregnant Muslim woman give birth. And that's Polly Pratt. She was the doctor. And so at one point she gets shot. So I had to create another doctor coat or whatever with a lot of blood, holes, bullet holes and blood stains and things like that. And that's something, little tricks people don't understand about. But and actually I was sewing people into the hijab, actually I was sewing people into their costumes, things like that. So anyway, that was one little project. From there, I went to Maine and worked at the Shakespearean Theater of Maine in Monmouth. I did that for a whole summer. I was their costume shop director and designer. Um, and from there, I've been to Montana. I did Cinderella for Performing Arts School in Great Falls. And I have little great stories about everything I've done because everything is a unique challenge.
Uh-huh.
And I've worked in Utah, couple different places. I was costume director for Utah Opera, which is the Met of the West, as they call
Right.
it.
Right now,
And
what was
and
that
then
experience? What was that experience like?
what was that like? It was fantastic. Busy because we had such a big budget. I was a costume director, and I was over. There were probably 8 to 9 professional stitchers in the workshop, and then we had a whole rentals department that we rented complete operas, costumes, and then there were sets as well. So um,
My goodness.
uh, it's phenomenal. The warehouse for their costumes is just amazing. But we would also build costumes for other opera companies and then ship them out as well. So we had our draper was from Bosnia. He was amazing, fantastic. We had a cutter draper who did her work, and then we had stitchers who would take the work baskets and then put pieces together, and create the costumes. And with rentals, people don't understand about rentals is that you make lots of seaming. So if you're doing a bone bodice, for instance, you want to put a lot of seams in it that are at least 3 inches on each side. So you have 6 inches everywhere to expand or to go back in. and
Right.
and things are flatlined. They're not made like regular clothing. Flatlining means there are 2 to 3 layers of fabric within each piece that you see on stage. If it's a strip on a bone bodice, there's probably 3 layers into that, three
Oh my.
layers into the sleeve, 3 layers into the coat shouldering, because that way you have that durability that's going to last for many productions and stand up to cleanings and things like that.
Now,
Um,
can you do little shortcuts, for example, like if you're doing a Shakespeare and can you like sneak a zipper into the back of it or something like that where the
yeah.
audience may not see?
Well, you just work that in. Whatever the director wants, we do. You know,
Okay.
if it's custom dyeing, if it's putting a godet is like a V-shaped piece of fabric into a skirt or a jacket, depends on the period. Jacket piece, um,
Yeah, but I was
you
just
know,
thinking that rather than a lot of buttons, a zipper would be quicker for backstage
exactly.
access. But
We add,
if it, but it would be inappropriate for a Shakespeare play, obviously. And so,
yes, yes, yes. And well, there's so many pieces, and they're like a jerkin, for instance, is what a man would wear, with a little bit of what they call a skirt at the waistline. That's called a
okay.
jerkin. Padded
Okay.
shoulders, it may be a caged sleeve. So you would see between the shoulder and the sleeve, you would see perhaps some type of cording
Oh,
tied. Okay, that's called a cage sleeve, one of them. Anyway, it's amazing. I had to do Romeo and Juliet. I'm sorry. No, I did that's another play. I had to do Cinderella in Great Falls for this performing arts high school. And I had very little budget, and I had no people to really help me sew except ladies who quilted. And that's not the same as sewing uh, costumes or dresses. Uh, and anyway, and so I had a bag of old slips from some woman, and so I made cage sleeves for for the prince and the king, and I made pumpkin pants and just got tights online. They were really cheap, and you just make do with what you have. And people don't know it. You can put trim on anything, I used to make my own trim, if possible, because I like a custom look. So
There you go.
anyway,
That's
yeah.
that's so what do you think in your profession, what would be some of the larger misconceptions that people would have about what you do?
I think, okay, as a costume designer, they think, oh, you sketch it out and then you make it for me. And this is the fabric I want. This is the color I want. And they don't understand all the many steps that are involved when I'm commissioned to do a costume for someone, not alone just the think time. I'm thinking at 3 in the morning sometimes, and sketching and figuring out what type of material will work. Like this past summer, I don't think I sent you a picture of it, but I did a costume cosplay, which is huge. A lot of people love cosplay
Right.
costumes. And so one of the mediums that you use is Warbler, which is a thermoplastic. It's very thin, very lightweight, but you can heat it, mold it into anything, and then it hardens and it's so strong and durable. So I would make breastplates out of Warbler.
Okay.
Also, there's a thing called EVA foam. Um, uh, it's a ethyl vinyl. Anyway, it's a type of foam that you can heat as well, and you can mold it. So if I'm going to do a breastplate for a woman and I want to have, the cups or whatever, that's what I have to use because it's soft, but it will hold its shape when it's cold. Once it's heated up, then I can cut it, I can dye it, I can paint it. Um, I can drill holes in it. Same with the Warbler. Warbler is so thin, you can't really attach EVA foam and Warbler together except with contact cement. And it's just all chemicals, it's science going on here too.
Gotcha.
So we have science going on, we have geometry, we have math of all kinds, as well as the English language and the history of what people wore, for thousands of years. So I love
How
it.
much how much research do you have to do for some of these?
Oh my gosh, it depends on the actual thing. When I was researching to do that particular costume this summer, and what I did, I made a helmet for her, and she wanted to come to a point, and I put, and her character's name was Angel Warrior. So I created these feathers that came up to the top of her crown, but the crown itself, I thought, how am I going to keep this on her head? You can't do a chin strap and you can't do a hat. So I created where I have this around here, and then across the head was a band of Warbler. And then from here to the back was another piece of Warbler. So they crisscrossed like this.
Okay.
And then she would put it on like a cap, take it on, take it off. And then she could pull her hair up and cover up the Warbler
Oh,
bands. No one knew it. And it was lightweight and it looked fabulous. And it's all gold. And I put jewels in it. And I did her breastplate for her and hip girths. And I did epaulets with that looked like feathers that were in layers. So
now
she
are these real feathers or are these
feather, no, they were EVA foam. And
okay?
then they're all sprayed, and I painted them silver and gold. So you had a sheen going on in the sun. And so those epaulet feathers were huge. She had a choker and it came to a point with a little dagger hanging off of it. It was very cool with a stone in it. But she's very much into that. And what I did was I thought, how am I going to attach these epaulets? Because she's got to get them off and on. Everything, comfort is the bottom line for me, for most
Sure.
costumers. It's got to be practical. You got to be able to go to the bathroom, and you've got to be able to not pass out from heat, and you've got to be able to get it off and on by yourself if possible. So what I did off of her choker, I created these tabs of EVA foam, and then I attached a heavy duty Velcro. And then when I made the epaulets of the feathers, the strip feather, they were fabulous. I also had Velcro there. They would stick right onto her. So they came like pauldrons. So I had hip pauldrons with the same feather thing, and then these, and then her breastplate, and then her crown. It was fabulous. So I guess I didn't
And
send you a picture of that, but I should do that. So it
yeah,
was really fun.
that sounds really kind of involved.
It was, and I had never worked with it. So it was like Stress City, right? It's like, how am I going to? So I watched a lot of videos on YouTube so I could understand the nature of the warble. And then I started playing with it myself and I realized, oh, it's not so bad. It's fabulous. So I have a new medium now that I get to work with. So besides
That's amazing.
fabrics, yeah.
I know that when I was doing a lot of gigs, uh, and I've laughed about this. I said that the problem is that we practice really, really, really hard to make it look easy, so everybody thinks it is easy. You
Oh yes.
know?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. That's why if I as a custom job, if I'm doing for somebody and I give them a quote of a price, I have a price range because it depends on how many hours I really have to put
Oh, sure.
into it.
Yeah.
And they don't think they think, oh, it'll just be a couple $100, but sometimes it's a lot more than that.
Little sticker shock.
It's a lot more than that. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
yeah, well, in addition to costume design, I've also worked the Broadway shows that come through um, at Michigan State at the Wharton Center. So
Uh-huh.
I've been the lead costumer for several big shows.
Oh,
So I was the giraffe tech. I was
what does that mean?
for Lion King. Me and another girl were the costume techs for the giraffe. So we had special training for 2 weeks, and that's
Wow.
all we did. So I had this big ladder I would carry around with me and open it up, and the guy would climb up onto the top and sit, and he would be in his basic suit, and then I would strap his giraffe legs onto him that are specially created, um, like stilts for his hands, and then he had arm. Anyway, it was everything had to be done in order and exactly precise, or he would fall. He would lose his balance. The big giraffe head was on a helmet, like a construction helmet that had the little dial in the back, so you could actually um, tighten it down. Okay, so
Oh,
he'd put it on, he would tighten it down, and then there was a chin strap, and then there was a safety strap off the very back of the giraffe head onto his shoulder. There was a special hook there, and so that would keep him. But
wow.
that was my job, was to make sure he was safe, that he was in and out of that thing correctly, and sometimes he had to get a quick change and get off stage, and then get out of it. And so it's been wonderful. So I got to do Cinderella, and I know all the bells and whistles about her quick change into her from her peasant dress into her blue gown. She does it on stage in front of everybody. I know
Wow.
all the secrets about that, as well as I've done Aladdin, and I did Jafar. I was his dresser.
Okay.
And at the very end, if you ever seen Aladdin, but he changes from like black all of a sudden a puff of smoke, and then he's in a red outfit, then a puff of smoke, and he's in a gold outfit. So it's like I had to dress him every night to make sure that those changes were ready. And it's a bunch of tubing and fish line and magnets, and everything has to be just so. So I love that aspect, the technical aspect of costume. Some people don't like that. Some designers, they just want to design and not deal with it. But I love being actually going behind the scenes and being a dresser. So that's really fun
That
for me.
sounds like fun. So now
Yeah.
has this led to, I mean, you're doing the Wharton Center. Do you like work with other companies? Do you,
Yes. Right. Right. Well, it's funny. It's like sometimes they hear about me. I'll get contacted by people and say, "Oh, we just heard about you, or we saw you on the internet, and we want you to like do our summer stock, or can you make this for me?" Or, like a year ago, summer for Halloween, a couple found me on some internet place, I don't know where, and wanted me to do a Buck Rogers costume. So I created Buck Rogers and Wilma Deering. That was his wife
okay. Uh-huh.
from the 70s. And so
Right.
I did research for that and created their outfits and got the wigs. And I'm head to toe when I costume, even to the soles of the shoes. If the soles of the shoes aren't period, if I'm doing a period piece, then they're not right. I won't do it. Everything has to be right for me, head to toe,
Uh-huh.
wig, hat, glasses, uh, if it's facial hair, whatever has to be done for a man, same for a woman. She has to have the right bustle or whatever, down to the right shoes. So that's just the way I am. And I guess people either they like it or they don't. It's like, no, I'm not going to cost you more money, but I want to do it right. I want to, like, I remember when Pirates of the Caribbean came out. Okay, with Johnny Depp, the very first one. And I'm in the theater watching it, looking at the costumes and everything. And then they do an edit, and then they come back to the girl and she has lip gloss on. And it's like, no, 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 no. See, that's not right. That's not period. So I really enjoy when things are done right. Like a lot of British shows, are done that way. They're very meticulous about each style and each seam line and each whatever the woman or the man is wearing on his face. So, it's I want that whatever I create to take the audience viewer back to that moment in time so that they're there. I don't want to have it edit and have lip gloss. It's like, no, you know, I don't want the wrong shoes on this person. So that's how I am. That's how I work.
Do any directors get grumpy with you over that kind of stuff?
um, sorry, I have a kitty here that wants to say hi. Do I have, let's see. No, in the end, they're like, "Oh, wow, I didn't think of that, because they have a lot on their mind. So some directors are very easily guided.
Ah,
Some directors are already know what they want, and it's just a matter of. I'm sorry, I have a kitty in here.
that's we occasionally have house pets as
Ah,
as
well,
extra guests.
I
That's
had closed the door, but she decided she was going to get in anyway, and she did. She's a new kitty. Um, so some directors are very precise in what they want. So when I sit down with a director, I like to pick his brain, his or her brain,
uh-huh.
to get their vision. So I get their vision on the stage. Okay. I get their vision in a costume. I want to know exactly what they want. And some designers maybe aren't as detailed as I am, but for me, that's the meat and potatoes of it for me. That's what I want to deliver. That's why you're paying me, or that's why you're asking me to do this, because that's just how I look at things.
Right.
And I have had wonderful, wonderful compliments and praises from different directors and even the actors and actresses. At the end of a run, I will get a wonderful thank you gift. It's like, wow, this is really sweet of you. And then
That
the
is
note may
special.
be, thank you for taking such care of me and putting me into that character. Because I know the power of clothing, not just, we're all in a costume, right?
Right.
Like Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. So if and I've seen how costumes will transform a regular person into Caesar or into, you know, uh, a Cleopatra or some
We're into a
other
villain.
person, obscure person from the past that we're looking at. You know, I remember at Utah we did Salome, the opera about
Uh-huh.
Salome, and when, and I love working with the wig and makeup people because we're a team. We work together to create this person. So when I saw John the Baptist in his wig and beard, and then I had the skins made for him. That's what the director wanted him,
Sure.
and we had dirt on him. It's not real dirt. It's it has to be kosher. It has to be OSHA. So everything it looked like he was, been in the pit, and which he had been. And Salome with her seven veils dancing, and it's when opera, I love opera. Probably more than musical theater or just acting, because opera is such a beautiful art that person is standing there singing with this little instrument right here. There's no microphone, and then they have to act as well as deliver this. And so the costuming has to be that they could breathe and that they're not going to pass out from heat, or something's not going to get caught on a prop for something on the stage. And things have happened. People have tripped on stage and fell and busted their chin open, and you have to deal with that in the moment. But getting back to this Salome production that I did, the gentleman who was Herod came, mainly worked in Europe, older gentleman, short, the perfect look for Herod. And his costume was all out of leather. Our designer came from New York, and so she designed everything in leather for this man. So he had leather with the epaulets going off here and the skirt, and then his costume. And he was at our dress rehearsal, our final dress. He stopped and he was like, his face got really red, and he just ripping off his costume. Says, "I can't take this anymore. I can't take it." I thought, this man's gonna have a coronary. So I was in the audience watching, because that's what I do. I take notes when I'm watching. the rehearsals. And so I got backstage and got him and I custom designed a, at that time, a special ice pack and for him to do. Yes, so I created a special ice pack, and what people don't understand about ice packs, there's different degrees of coolness or coldness.
Okay.
So I worked with him and got the one that he wanted exactly, not too cold, not too hot, but and the right size under his costume. So I designed a special strapping thing that would go under his costume. Nobody would know it was there. And I had his ice packs backstage, and they were the right temperature. So right before he would go on stage, I just pop one of those in the front and the back. And he was Mr. Happy. He could sing, he could act without worrying if he's going to stroke out, you know. So those are little things that come up, and you got to deal with it right then, you know.
And
But
that's, of course, that's something somebody in the audience would never, ever know about.
oh no, they would never know that. And people don't understand. You probably a lot of people in costumes, especially if they have a full head costume on, there's usually a fan inside of that head.
Really?
Like say Sparty. Let's take look at Sparty. There's a fan
Uh-huh.
inside of his head at the very top. And he also probably has cooling packs on. They have cooling vest now, and you freeze them and then you pop them in, and they don't get wet or anything. It's a special material in these little pouch squares on their cooling vest. I do the cows costumes for the Michigan Dairy. I've maintained them for, gosh, 10, 12 years at least. And I created costumes for their cows, like when Miss Mutilda wants to go to the baseball game and it's princess night. She has a princess tutu and a garland of daisies and ribbons down the back, and that's what she wears, you know. But I maintain all their stuff, so I keep all their heads clean and make sure the fan's working, and I make sure their cooling vest if they need to be repaired, I'll do all that, or redo zippers, whatever I have to do. But I take care of that. So anyway, it's just a fun thing, that another aspect of costume, you know. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
So now, um, you know all of this stuff. Do you find yourself in a situation where people come to you for like consulting or anything like that?
Occasionally, you know, they'll say, okay, I have this situation with a costume. What do you do? Although I seems like most costume people I know don't do that. This isn't very nice to say, and I'm not pointing any fingers. It just seems like they're like, oh, I can take care of that. I'm good. I'll figure this out, you know. And I'm not sure why that is, but I'm just always willing to share anything I've learned over the past 20 some years doing this around the country, that this worked for me, maybe it'll work for you, you know. So,
Now, how has everything changed since the pandemic, like a before after kind of thing?
well, right before the pandemic started, like the end of like first part of November, I finished my last opera at Grand Rapids. It was their fall opera, and I flew to Utah just for a little vacation, and I came back, and it was January, and the pandemic was starting, and it's like, and I was scheduled to do Frozen, which was coming into Wharton, and that was going to be like the end of January. Well, of course, that got canceled. Everything got canceled, and I found myself home for the first time in for 3 years, but first time in 20 years. Hadn't been home at all. So after the first year of the pandemic, and I decided I'm going to reach out to some of my people and let them know I'm here in town if they need anything. And I do Liam, the extra large leprechaun. You'll see him he MCs a lot of the Irish
Oh, okay.
festivals, the Sparta Fest, things, the Detroit Irish Parade. He does all these things. So I've made everything he wears. And so I contacted him, and he said, actually, yeah, it's a great time. Let's refresh my whole wardrobe. So I created a new coat and a new vest and all kinds of stuff for him to wear. That's very St. Patrick's, very Irishy. And then I have a professional Santa I've done for about 18 years. So he was doing Zoom Santa, so he needed a whole different look without the big coat. And so I created shirts and vests for him and things like that. And it's like people just heard about me and said, hey, I need this. Can you do that for me? I had someone getting married, and they needed she needed her dress altered. And from Grand Rapids, she was actually one of the chorus members in the opera there. And I said, if I can get the dress, I can do it, and let's get on Zoom and let me see exactly what I need to do. I'm a real visual person, so I needed to see that. And so he brought me the dress, left it on a bag on my deck. I put the dress in, I fixed it the way I thought it needed to be done. And he came back, picked it up the same way. And then they sent me their wedding pictures and it fit like a glove. It's like, great, I know, exactly. So not everything fits the first time, but I have a pretty good track record for some reason. So
That's amazing.
yeah, it's
That's amazing.
great.
So,
It's great.
well, Patty, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show.
You're welcome.
This was really interesting. I probably could talk the rest of the afternoon about this kind of stuff.
Oh, well,
So,
good.
but I'm not going to bore you.
Oh, well, I love talking about it because I have so many amazing stories and I've been blessed with meeting so many wonderful people around the world, really. And it's great.
Well, then maybe you can come back again sometime soon.
I would love to. That would be fantastic, Roger.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you.
Wow, what an interesting chat. It was fun to listen to all of the stuff that goes into a successful performance. I'm grateful that Patty was willing to spend some time with us, and I'm thankful that you did too. And I look forward to seeing you again real soon on Creative Conversations with Roger Humphrey.